I've got to roost out here on this ridge without any rest until I've hanged myself. Southwest you'll pick up the road from Watervale, said the man in charge of the repairing party on the overland telegraph line, addressing two travellers with lead pack horses. But it's almighty rough across there, and I'd advise you to go back to Watervale and follow the road. You'll find it shorter in the end. Don't like turning back, said one of the men, and our horses are pretty fresh and shot. It's not stone so much as sand ridges, white sand and pine scrub. However, you'd better turn out here and start tomorrow morning, for there's only one place where you can reckon on water, and that's a creek about halfway. What came of the old loony who was knocking about here 6 months ago? Said one of the linemen, addressing the crowd in general as they sat eating their meal that evening. Never heard, returned another, but there was some yarn about his tracks having been seen going out the way you fellows are going, and another yarn about his horses having turned up at Watervale. But I never heard the rights of it. Next morning the two men started, and towards sundown came to the creek they had been told about. It was a desolate-looking spot enough, a bare, sandy creek, where a trickle of water down the centre of the bed cut its way between white sand ridges, whereupon gaunt, angular pine trees threw their naked arms about. There was a little grass on the edge of the bank, and the travellers soon turned their tired horses out, for it had been heavy travelling all day. "What's that halfway up the ridge there, Jack?" said one of them. "Blessed if it does not look like a rag of an old tent. Let's go up and see." It was the tattered rags of an old tent, which the wind had blown into ribbons, and the late owner sat with his back to a tree, as if complacently contemplating the wreck of his property. He had been dead some months, and the summer heat had dried him to a mummy. "What the devil's that round his neck?" said Alf to his mate as they stood and surveyed the relic. They went forward and found a surcingle round the neck of the corpse, like a running noose, the end of the surcingle having been passed through the buckle and pulled nearly taut. "Looks as if he'd been hanged and then let down again," said Jack, glancing up the tree. There was a suspicious bough handily situated just overhead. They found a pack saddle and a riding saddle in the camp, and a few of the rest of the impedimenta a man generally carries in outside country. But the dogs had been at work, and the leather had been damaged by the weather. "I suppose it's the old loony the men spoke of, whoever he was." "I reckon we'd better bury him in the morning. It's too late tonight," said Jack. "What on earth did he want to come and die here for?" grumbled Alf, who seemed to look upon it rather in the light of a personal affront. "I suppose he couldn't pick and choose his own place, could he?" retorted Jack. "Although, for the matter of that, I don't see what he had to die of about here. It's not a cheerful spot, certainly, but there's no occasion for a man to die on that account." The men cooked and ate their meal, and soon were fast asleep. Jack woke up in the middle of the night and looked around and listened to hear which way the horses were making. It was bright moonlight, and if the place looked cheerless by day, it looked far more so at night. The white bare sand and the sombre trees with their black shadows did not combine to make up a lively picture. A wind was wailing too, and made a melancholy sound amongst the pine boughs. Jack's attention was drawn by the flapping of the old tent on the ridge. He looked that way, started, jumped up, and stared with might and main. He glanced at Alf, but he was sleeping soundly. What he thought he saw was a dark figure, leaping and waving its arms about under the tree where the corpse lay. "Must be a moving bough," muttered Jack. "Anyway, I'll go and see without waking Alf." Buckling on his belt and revolver, he went noiselessly to the spot and came onto a strange sight. The corpse had got up and was indulging in strange and unbecoming antics, springing in the air and trying to throw the end of the surcingle that was round its neck over the branch overhead. At last it gave up and moaned so miserably that Jack felt sorry for it. He was a soft-hearted fellow. "What's the matter, old man?" he said. "Matter?" groaned the corpse. "Why, I've got to roost out here on this ridge without any rest until I've hanged myself." "What do you want to hang yourself for? I should have thought you'd have no need to do that." Jack told me this yarn himself and said he felt as cool as a cucumber all through the interview. "You don't understand," returned the corpse. "All our family have hanged themselves. My father, my grandfather, and my Uncle Bill. My cousin Ned was hanged by the hangman. Now, my Uncle Bill was a cantankerous old curmudgeon who always disliked me. And before he did it, he wrote a letter about his property, and in it he said, 'I mistrust my nephew Frank,' that's me. 'When the time comes, he'll go back on his family, see if he don't.' And then the old maligner went and did it. Now I felt very hurt about this, and it rather preyed upon me. So one day I made an attempt to prove old Uncle Bill a liar, but I was cut down and reprimanded by a magistrate, and altogether made a mess of it. I tried another time, same result. Same result again a third time, and I was getting about tired of it. Then I made up my mind to come out a way back somewhere where a man could have a fair show. I got a hankering after the telegraph posts, but I didn't think it quite fair because those chaps on the line were very sociable, so I came out here. And would you believe it? That very day I started, I was taken bad with the fever. You know what the fever is, how it takes it out of a man's knees and neck and backbone and everything else. How I managed to get here, I don't know, but somehow I did, and here I had to camp. I was bad, and a bit off my head for a few days. And when I was able to get about, I found that my horses had come to the conclusion that it was a God-forgotten kind of place and had cleared out. Then it struck me that now was my chance. Here was I, all alone, no one to cut me down. I'd show Uncle Bill if I was going to go back on the family. And then, here the corpse yelled in agony, I was too weak, too gone in the joints to throw that blessed surcingle over the branch. I tried and tried and tried. And at last one day I made a sort of a cast of it and half choked myself. And being so weak I fell down under the tree and died. The corpse was silent for a while. Ever since then, went on the defunct, I've been tormented by old Uncle Bill, coming and jeering at me. And night after night I've tried to do it properly and failed. And never a soul has come to this day to help me. Now, went on the corpse in a coaxing tone, would you mind giving me a hand? Just to pull on the surcingle, you know. Throw it over the limb first. Jack took up the surcingle and considered. There could be no harm in hanging a dead man who wanted it so badly. The corpse took up his position, and he threw the surcingle over the limb, but it fell too short for him to grasp. Wait a minute, he said. I will go and get one of ours and buckle on. Jack went to the camp and got a surcingle. Alf was still snoring, and the dead man was awaiting him with a heavenly smile of expectation on his face. Now then, said Jack, say when you're ready. Ready, cried the corpse. Up you go, said Jack, and halfway up to the limb he went. Jack took a turn and a couple of half hitches round a handy sapling, then, saying "Good night," went back to his camp and slept soundly until morning. The two travellers got up at daylight. Alf went after the horses, which had gone down to the creek in a different direction. Jack got breakfast ready and glanced at the place of his midnight adventure. But there was nothing hanging on the tree, so he came to the conclusion that it was a nightmare and made up his mind to say nothing about it. Presently Alf returned with the horses, and they had breakfast. "Suppose we'd better go and bury that chap," growled Alf. "Good job at soft digging." Jack assented, and they started. Arrived at the spot, Alf looked round and started. No wonder. The body lay under the limb, the head a little distance off, and over the branch dangled the empty noose. Evidently the defunct's neck had not stood the strain. Jack kept silence. Then Alf strode over to where the second surcingle was fastened to the sapling and examined it. "Blowed if he didn't come down and get my surcingle," he muttered as he recognised his initials marked on it. He unbuckled it and marched off, saying to Jack as he did so, "Look here, if that fella could get up last night and hang himself with my surcingle, he can just bury himself as well.